The courtroom did not breathe. An officer stood frozen on the witness stand, his cheeks still red from the slap he never saw coming, delivered by the police chief's own son right there in front of Judge Judy. Gasps rippled through the room like a breaking tide. The young man smirked, certain his father's badge would shield him from consequence, but Judge Judy was already rising, and what she said next would shatter that certainty forever. Before we jump in, tell me, where are you watching from? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The courtroom holds its breath. The officer on the stand keeps one hand close to his cheek, the faint red imprint of the slap still alive on his skin. And across from him sits the police chief's son, leaning back in his chair as if the world exists solely for his amusement. The smirk on his face is not just confidence, it is entitlement wearing a costume. Judge Judy watches him from the bench, eyes steady, expression unreadable. There is no anger in her gaze, no shock, no visible reaction at all. Just calculation, the careful study of someone who believes he is untouchable. She lets the silence stretch, letting it settle into every corner of the room like dust that cannot be swept away. The young man breaks first. "Can we get this over with?" he mutters, tapping the table with a rhythm that sounds more like impatience than remorse. The officer stiffens. His badge catches the light, a reminder of the uniform he serves, the oath he took. His voice is careful when he speaks. "Your Honor, I was giving him a simple instruction. He disrespected me," the son cuts in, shrugging as if the explanation should suffice. "And nobody disrespects me, not in public, not anywhere." His arrogance ripples through the room. A few audience members shift in their seats, the tension settling into their bones. Even the bailiff straightens, watching him with a subtle narrowing of the eyes. Judy tilts her head. "Is that so?" she asks, her tone light but edged with something sharper. The defendant nods proudly, mistaking interest for approval. He does not see the danger in her calm. He does not feel the truth already circling him. The officer continues, his voice steadying. "Your Honor," he shouted at me, "stepped into my space and you overreacted." The son interrupts again, louder this time. "I barely touched you." The officer's jaw tightens. Judy notices it. The cameras notice it. The room notices it. She shifts her gaze from the officer to the defendant, studying the casual slouch, the practiced smirk, the rehearsed nonchalance. "Stand," she says quietly. The son blinks. "Why?" "Stand," she repeats, voice still soft but firm enough to cut through the air. He rises slowly, still smirking, as though entertaining a performance he believes he will win. Judy folds her hands. "Tell me," she says, her voice quieter than before. "What exactly gave you the impression that putting your hands on an officer is something you get to walk away from with a smile?" The smirk twitches, the first fracture. She leans forward just slightly, the courtroom leaning with her. "And more importantly," she adds, her gaze narrowing like a camera closing in, "who taught you that?" His throat moves once, a quiet swallow he tries to hide, but cannot. The smirk fades, and the room feels the shift. The echo of Judge Judy's question still hangs in the air when the defendant lowers himself back into his seat, smirk returning like a reflex. It is weaker now, but it clings to his face as if pride alone can hold it there. He thinks the worst has passed. He thinks the courtroom is done pressing him. He is wrong. The officer shifts on the stand, adjusting his posture as if bracing for the next blow, not a physical one, but the kind that lands in front of cameras and crowds. His dignity trembles under the weight of what happened, but his professionalism holds firm. The red fingerprint on his cheek feels brighter under the fluorescent lights, a faint reminder of a moment of unchecked power. Judge Judy turns toward him. "Finish your statement, officer." "Without interruption this time." The young man scoffs, loud enough to echo. "I said he disrespected me, Your Honor. That is why this all started. He tried to tell me where I could stand, as if he had that authority, as if my father would not—" He stops, but the implication finishes itself in the room. A hush drops over the space like a heavy curtain. Judy's eyebrow lifts a fraction. "Your father," she repeats, as though the words themselves have a texture she is inspecting. "You seem to believe his badge belongs to you." The son shrugs, leaning back again, voice dripping dismissiveness. "People know who I am. They know better than to treat me like I am just some random guy." His gaze flicks toward the officer. He should have known better. The officer inhales slowly, almost painfully, before speaking. Your Honor, I did know who he was. That was the problem. That sentence shifts the energy. The gallery murmurs, even the cameras hum like they are listening more closely. Judy tilts her head, interest piqued. Explain that. The officer nods, fingers tightening around the rail of the witness stand. He approached me during a crowd control situation. He ignored all directions. When I asked him to step back for safety reasons, he leaned in, got close, and said, he hesitates, eyes dropping for a moment. He said that I should rethink my tone if I care about my job. The defendant laughs, actually laughs. Because you should. The crowd jolts. The bailiff's shoulders tense. Judy does not raise her voice. She does not have to. Sit up straight, she says softly. The laugh dies instantly. She studies him again, not the way a judge studies a defendant, but the way a surgeon studies something that needs removing. Calm, precise, inevitable. You believe, she says, that authority extends to family members? That a badge is a mirror you get to stand behind when you misbehave? The son opens his mouth, but nothing coherent comes out, only fragments of entitlement wrapped in uncertainty. Judy exhales, slow and measured. And yet, she continues, turning a page on her desk, your version of events does not match the report, or the officer's statement. The smirk collapses. And it certainly, she says, her eyes narrowing, does not match what I'm about to read next. She taps the file once, the sound sharp as a gavel. Let us talk about the last time you barely touched someone in uniform. The file on Judge Judy's desk opens with a slow, deliberate motion, a gesture so small, yet the entire courtroom seems to lean toward it. A single sheet slides forward, its edges slightly curled, as if even the paper carries the memory of something mishandled. The police chief's son watches her fingers brush the page, and for the first time, his smirk flickers with something unfamiliar. Unease. Judy does not speak right away. She lets the quiet grow roots. She lets the defendant feel the weight of the moment before the truth even arrives. The officer on the stand lowers his gaze, sensing something larger rising beneath the surface, something he did not know existed when he walked in today. Finally, Judy lifts her eyes. This, she says, tapping the page once, is interesting. The defendant shifts in his chair. It's old, he blurts. It was nothing, a misunderstanding. Judy raises an eyebrow. Most misunderstandings, she replies, do not come with a 3-page incident report and a request for disciplinary review. The officer looks up, startled. The gallery rustles like wind through restless branches. The young man scoffs too quickly. The officer exaggerated. I barely touched him. The echo of Section 2's lie hangs in the air, the same words, recycled with the same arrogance, collapsing under the same scrutiny. His voice cracks around the edges, the first real fracture in the performance he's been rehearsing his whole life. Judy turns to the officer. Were you aware this was not the first time he put his hands on someone in uniform? The officer shakes his head, slow, troubled. No, Your Honor, I was not. Judy studies the defendant again, her gaze a quiet spotlight. Tell me, she says, how many times has barely touched been your explanation? He stiffens. His jaw moves like he is trying to swallow the truth before it escapes. The judge reads aloud from the report. Verbal aggression escalating into physical contact, refusal to comply with lawful instruction, and, her eyes lift, the officer notes that you said, quote, my father will fix this. The defendant flinches. It is small but undeniable. The gallery murmurs. Even the bailiff exhales through his nose, the sound heavy, like he has heard this story too many times. And yet, Judy says, setting the page down with surgical precision, there is no sign this complaint was ever pursued. No follow-up, no disciplinary action, no hearing, nothing. The implication lands like a dropped gavel. The son's posture collapses a millimeter, but a millimeter is enough. The facade is slipping. The myth of invincibility, the golden boy protected by the shine of his father's badge, is beginning to crack. Judy leans back slightly. You called this a misunderstanding, but this report describes something else. A beat of silence, something cold settles into the atmosphere. Pattern, she says. The officer's eyes widen. The defendant's face drains. The room tightens around the word like a noose. Judy lifts another document, thinner but somehow heavier. "And this next report," she says quietly, "is the one I want you to explain." The second document slides forward like a secret finally stepping into the light. Its edges are too crisp, too clean, the kind of file that looks untouched because someone wanted it forgotten. Judge Judy lifts it with 2 fingers, not dramatically but carefully. As if she knows the room is already bracing for what comes next. The air shifts, not colder, not quieter, just tighter, as though the truth itself is inhaling. The police chief's son watches her hand hover over the page, and his posture changes just slightly. His spine, once comfortably settled in arrogance, now stiffens in a way he cannot disguise. The performance is slipping. The Golden Boy myth is unraveling thread by thread. Judy opens the file. The room seems to lean closer. "This," she says, her voice even, "is a complaint from 18 months ago, filed by Officer Daniels, a complaint that mysteriously disappeared before review." The son's eyes snap upward. That shouldn't even be here." "On the contrary," Judy replies, "it should have been here the first time." The officer on the stand narrows his eyes, confusion turning into dawning horror. The audience murmurs, heads turning like spectators at a slow-moving disaster they suddenly recognize the shape of. Judy reads aloud. "Aggressive confrontation, elevated voice, verbal threats, and—" She pauses, allowing the silence to carve its own gravity. "Physical contact." A tremor runs through the defendant's jaw. "That officer exaggerated," he says, too fast, too loud. "He was out to get me. My father told me—" He stops. Judy's gaze sharpens. "Your father told you what?" He swallows. The motion is visible, shaky. "That it would not go anywhere, because it was nothing." The gallery reacts, a ripple of disbelief coursing through the room. The bailiff adjusts his stance, his expression tightening with a kind of quiet disgust, meant only for himself. The expression of a man who's seen the pattern long before anyone dared speak it aloud. Judy closes the folder halfway, enough to shield its contents but not its meaning. "This complaint," she says, voice precise as a scalpel, "was marked pending review," and then it vanished. No explanation, no follow-up, no signature from an oversight officer. She taps the file once. And yet the same language, the same behavior, the same justifications appear again today. The defendant's hands curl into fists. His breathing shifts, shallow, uneven. His eyes dart toward the door, toward escape routes that do not exist. Judy leans in just slightly, the camera of the room narrowing its focus to her expression, calm, unwavering, surgical. "I'm curious," she says. "How do you explain a complaint that disappeared, but still found its way to my bench?" The young man's lips part, but no words follow. Only panic flickering in the space where arrogance once stood. Judy lifts the document fully now, revealing a missing page, tucked behind the others, aligned too perfectly. "Because this," she says, eyes locking on him, "is the page you were never supposed to see." "Tell me," Judy says, voice soft as a blade, "who made sure this complaint never saw daylight?" For a moment, the courtroom holds the kind of silence that makes even the walls seem to listen. The police chief's son stares at the page Judge Judy has uncovered, a page he never knew existed, a page he believed had been buried long before today. The heat in his face drains slowly, leaving behind a pale, startled stillness. "Who made sure this never saw daylight?" Judy repeats. He blinks, once, twice. His throat tightens around words that refuse to come out cleanly. I do not know what that is supposed to mean," but the quiver in his voice betrays him. Judge Judy leans back, giving him space to either salvage the truth or choke on it. "Someone intervened," she says calmly. "Someone ensured that your actions were not recorded, not reviewed, not addressed. That does not happen without intention." His composure starts to unravel, piece by piece, like thread pulled from a too-perfect suit. He tries to adjust his posture, tries to reclaim the swagger he walked in with, but the movement is stiff, artificial, a performance collapsing under pressure. "I did not threaten anyone," he mutters. "Officer Daniels was dramatic. He always hated me." Judy lifts her eyes, steady as a held breath. "Did he say that?" Or did you decide that to make yourself feel justified? His jaw twitches. The camera tightens its imaginary lens. His hands, once confidently folded, now fidget with the edge of the table. The officer on the stand watches him closely now, not with anger, but with a strange mixture of recognition and unease, the look of someone realizing they were never the first, just the latest. Judy turns another page. This report states that after you shoved Officer Daniels, you said, "My father fixes everything." She looks up. Is that accurate? He shakes his head too quickly. No, I never. He twisted everything. You barely touched him, Judy says, just like today. His breath stumbles. Judy's voice sharpens only in precision, not volume. Your behavior in that report mirrors your behavior in this courtroom. The denial, the justification, the confidence that someone else will clean up after you. His eyes widen slightly, surprise at being read so thoroughly. Now, she says, leaning forward, answer my earlier question. Who told you the Daniels complaint would never follow you? He hesitates. Panic flickers again, this time stronger. He stops, swallowing hard. Someone said it would be handled, that it was over. Someone, Judy repeats. A friend, an officer, or perhaps someone closer? He says nothing. His silence is louder than any confession. The courtroom feels it, the shift, the fear, the unraveling. His shoulders begin to fold inward, as though the truth has weight, and it is finally being set upon him. Judy closes the file softly. Denial is a temporary shield, she says, but shields crack. Her gaze locks onto him, unblinking. And yours, she adds, is already breaking. Judy signals to the clerk. Bring forward the communication logs. Let us see who promised him immunity. The clerk approaches with a slim stack of printed communication logs, the kind of stack that looks harmless until someone reads what is inside. Judge Judy accepts the pages without ceremony. But the defendant reacts as if she's been handed a loaded weapon. His knee bounces, his fingers twitch against the table. Every breath he takes is sharper than the last. Judy flips through the first few pages, scanning them with the measured calm of someone already assembling truth inside her mind. These, she says, are internal department messages regarding the Daniels complaint. And your name appears earlier than expected. The young man stiffens. My father said, I never saw those. And yet, Judy replies, you were discussed in them. Frequently. The officer on the stand leans forward imperceptibly, not with satisfaction, but with the solemn weight of someone realizing this story stretches far beyond a single slap. He watches the defendant with a gaze that is no longer just personal hurt, but recognition of a system bending around one person's ego. Judy reads aloud. Recommendation for review, request for interview, and then she pauses on one highlighted line. Deputy Chief notes, per Chief's instruction, suspend action until further notice. A ripple runs through the gallery. The defendant's face fractures, not into emotion, but into exposure. The truth is stripping off the armor he spent years polishing. My father never told me that, he says, but his voice quivers around the edges, trembling under the weight of inherited privilege. Judy studies him. Did he ever tell you you were accountable for your actions? The question lands like a stone dropped into water, quiet but devastating in its ripple. He stares at the desk. His jaw locks. He told me people overreact, that things would blow over if I stayed calm, that the department understood who I was. Understood, Judy repeats, voice flat. Or feared. The defendant looks up, startled. The lighting overhead casts a faint shadow across his face, splitting it, half defiance, half something unbearably human. The officer speaks softly. Your Honor, this is why he slapped me. He thought nothing would happen. Judy nods once, acknowledging the emotional truth, not just the factual one. When a system shields someone from consequences, it teaches them one lesson, that accountability is optional. The defendant swallows hard. His bravado is gone now. What remains is a young man shaped by a father's shadow, a shadow so large it taught him he never needed to stand on his own. Judy closes the communication logs with a deliberate, controlled motion. These messages tell me your father influenced more than one case, but I am interested in what you knew, young man, and what you believed. He hesitates. His voice is small when it finally comes. I believed he would fix it, all of it. Judy's eyes narrow with quiet precision. And that, she says, is exactly the problem. She turns to the bailiff. Prepare the video evidence. The young man's breath stutters. He knows exactly what is on that screen. If you were sitting in that courtroom, what would you do? Stay silent or speak up? The lights dim just enough for the courtroom to shift into a different kind of silence, not the silence of waiting, but the silence of bracing. A monitor flickers to life beside the witness stand, its glow casting a pale reflection across polished wood and tense faces. The police chief's son visibly tightens, shoulders drawing inward, as though the screen itself is a threat. Judge Judy nods to the bailiff. Play it. The first frame appears. A crowded sidewalk, voices rising, a tense gathering. The officer, today's victim, stands just off-center, posture alert yet calm. And then, sliding into the frame like a storm disguised as a breeze, comes the chief's son. The gallery leans forward. The video rolls. He's already agitated, already in the officer's space, already talking too loudly for the moment to be benign. Pause, Judy instructs. The screen freezes on the young man mid-sentence, his mouth curled in a sneer that feels painfully familiar now. Judy addresses the courtroom. Note his posture, his proximity, his tone. This is not passive behavior. The son exhales through clenched teeth. He goaded me. The bailiff resumes the video. The son steps closer. The officer lifts a hand, not in defense, but in instruction. A gesture meant to de-escalate. The son swats it away and keeps advancing. The room reacts with a collective, uncomfortable murmur. Then comes the moment. The officer gives a calm, verbal direction. The chief's son leans forward, says something the camera cannot fully catch, and his body language changes, tightening, coiling. And then the strike. A sharp, deliberate motion, not reactive, not impulsive, intentional. A slap delivered with the confidence of someone who expects no consequence. The playback stops with a single command from Judy. Freeze. The screen halts on the frame of contact, the officer's head turning from the force, the defendant's hand still extended, the crowd recoiling. Judy studies the still image like it is evidence carved in steel. You said he disrespected you, she says. Tell me where in this frame the disrespect occurs, because all I see is you escalating a situation that did not require your temper. The defendant's voice cracks. He made me look stupid. The officer on the stand looks down, not from shame, but from the exhaustion of reliving what arrogance can do when left unchecked. Judy presses. Made you look stupid, or did he refuse to treat you like the authority figure you imagine yourself to be? He says nothing. His silence is a confession wrapped in breath. Judy turns back to the screen. Rewind 5 seconds. The slap is played again, slower, enlarged, irrefutable. This time, even the defendant cannot watch. His eyes fall to the table, hands gripping its edge as though the truth might drag him under. Judge Judy leans in slightly. This, she says, tapping the arm of her chair, is not a mistake. It is a pattern. The son flinches. The gallery goes still. Judy's gaze sharpens with controlled precision. Now, she says, voice cutting through the dim light, pause it on the moment before the slap, because that is where the real truth begins. The paused frame glows on the monitor like a confession caught mid-breath. Not the slap, not the moment everyone gasped, but the second before it, the space where intent lives, the place where truth hides. Judge Judy stands just enough to shift the room's energy. Look closely, she instructs, gesturing toward the frozen image. This frame tells us more than the strike ever could. The gallery squints, leaning forward. The officer is calm, hands positioned in a non-threatening instructional gesture. But the chief's son, his shoulders are angled forward, his jaw is set, his hand is already lifting before a single word is spoken. It is not a reaction, it is preparation. A few people in the audience inhale sharply as realization settles over them, like a heavy, unwelcome shadow. The defendant feels it too. His fingers tremble against the tabletop, his nails scraping lightly across the wood as though trying to anchor himself to a version of events he can no longer defend. "That is not me preparing to hit him," he says, voice thin. "That is, I do not know." Judy cuts him off with a raised hand, not harsh, just decisive. "Your body knows what your mouth refuses to admit." Her words hang in the dimmed light, as sharp as the truth itself. She approaches the screen, stopping just inches from the image. "Your stance, your expression, your arm already in motion, this is escalation. Deliberate escalation." She turns to him. "You were not provoked, you were challenged, and you lashed out because someone dared not bow to your status." His face tightens with something more fragile than anger, fear, the kind he has spent years burying under ego and immunity. The officer watches him quietly, his expression no longer hurt but weighted with a deeper understanding, a sadness for the pattern being revealed in real time. Judy returns to the bench. "This moment," she says, tapping the file beside her, "aligns with testimony, with prior reports, and with the dismissed complaint. It is consistent behavior." The defendant's breath shudders. "I was told it would never matter," he whispers, before he realizes he spoke aloud. The courtroom freezes, Judy's eyes narrow. Told by whom? He clamps his mouth shut, but the damage is done. His fear has cracked the last piece of the illusion he tried so hard to sustain. Judy sits back, voice dangerously calm. "Cases do not vanish on their own. Complaints do not disappear mysteriously. Videos do not show up at this bench without reason." She lets the silence deepen, lets the truth settle into every seat, every camera, every gaze. And the fact that this case almost vanished too, she pauses, the weight of her words tightening the air. That tells me someone wanted this pattern buried forever. The defendant's eyes widen. His panic is no longer subtle. It pulses through him in uneven breaths. Judy lifts a sealed envelope from beneath her bench, one no one has seen until now. "This," she says softly, "arrived anonymously, and it contains the piece of truth someone risked everything to bring me." The sealed envelope rests in Judge Judy's hand, like something fragile and dangerous. The kind of truth that does not just reveal, it detonates. Its paper is worn at the edges, as if someone handled it with shaking fingers before letting it go. Someone terrified, someone done being silent. The defendant's eyes lock onto it, and for a heartbeat, everything inside him stills. His pulse seems to pause, his breath falters. He knows that envelope is not a coincidence, it is consequence. Judy sets it on the bench with deliberate care. "This arrived at my office," she says, her voice low but steady, "with no return name, no signature, no note. Just this evidence, and a risk someone chose to take." The officer on the stand inhales sharply, as if realizing he is not the only victim in this story. Judy opens the envelope. Inside is a single printout, a scan, a copy of something someone did not want disappearing again. The missing page from the Daniels complaint, the original version. The defendant's face drains of color. "This," Judy continues, holding it up so that the room can see, "was never intended to resurface. It contains statements that contradict the edited file your department attempted to archive." A murmur ripples through the gallery. Not outrage, not shock, but recognition. This is corruption with a familiar shape. The son's breathing stutters. I did not know about any of that. I swear I did not." Judy's gaze cuts through him. "You did not need to know the mechanics to benefit from them." She turns to the officer. "This original report is clearer. It documents his behavior as a serious incident requiring disciplinary review." The officer's throat tightens. "Someone risked their career for that." "Yes," Judy says quietly. "They did." The defendant grips the edge of the table. "Who would do that? Why would they?" "To stop this," Judy replies, motioning to the courtroom. "To stop him, to stop the cycle, because someone saw what you were becoming and feared what you would become next." His eyes flicker, confusion, anger, fear fighting for space beneath his skin. I never meant, I did not think." "No," Judy interrupts softly. "You did not think, because nothing in your world forced you to." The envelope sits between them now like a moral divide. She leans forward. Someone inside your father's department risked everything to expose this. They believed the truth mattered more than their security, more than their job, maybe more than their safety. Her voice softens, but the weight in it grows. Ask yourself why. The defendant opens his mouth, but no sound comes. Only realization, slow, painful, settling into the cracks of his collapsing narrative. Judy taps the envelope once. This was sent because silence was no longer survivable. The room breathes as one, heavy, weighted waiting. Judy lifts her gaze, eyes narrowing. And now we must hear from the one person whose shadow looms over every unanswered question here. She nods to the bailiff. Bring in the police chief. The side door opens with a soft creak, but the sound hits the courtroom like a thunderclap. Every head turns, every breath pauses. The police chief steps inside, not with the authority of a man used to commanding rooms, but with the weight of someone who suddenly realizes the walls around him have heard too much. His uniform seems heavier than usual, his stride slower, his eyes older. He looks at his son first, not with pride, not with anger, but with a fear that flickers behind his stern expression. A father seeing the cost of every decision he refused to face. Judge Judy watches him approach the witness stand. Chief, she says evenly, take your seat. He nods, voice cracking just slightly as he answers, yes, Your Honor. The microphone catches the tremor he tries to hide. The defendant sinks lower in his chair. His fingers grip the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. For the first time, he looks like the child he once was, scared, unsure, seeking protection he no longer trusts. Judy begins. Chief, you are aware of why you're here. Yes, he says, clearing his throat. I understand. Then let us begin with the Daniels complaint. How did it disappear? A ripple passes through the room. The chief's jaw tightens, his eyes drop to his hands that once held authority, now trembling from truth. I redirected it, he admits. The words leave him slowly, like releasing something toxic he has carried too long. The defendant jerks in his seat. Dad! Quiet! Judy snaps without raising her voice. The command silences him instantly. The chief continues, each word a reluctant surrender. I thought it would protect him. He was young, impulsive. I wanted to give him another chance. Judy's voice is steady, but her gaze sharpens. Another chance becomes a pattern when nothing changes. The chief nods, the pain of recognition settling deep. I know that now. The officer on the stand watches with a mixture of heartbreak and grim understanding. This is not just corruption. It is a father failing a son in the name of love, a love that blinded him to the damage being done. Judy leans forward. Chief, did you instruct your department to stall or remove disciplinary actions involving your son? A beat of silence. Then, yes. The word hangs heavy, dragging the room into stillness. The defendant's breath catches. You told me they overreacted. You told me I was trying to protect you, the chief says, his voice breaking. From yourself, from what you were becoming. His son stares at him, stunned. The facade of arrogance melts, revealing the fractured boy underneath. Judy interrupts gently but firmly. Chief, you must answer something directly. He looks at her, defeated. Anything, Your Honor. Why? She asks. Did this latest complaint almost disappear too? The chief freezes. The room freezes with him. His silence is not confusion, it is dread. Judy's voice lowers. What were you protecting him from this time? The chief closes his eyes. When he opens them, they shine with something raw and breaking. Your Honor, you do not understand. This incident is not the first time he struck someone who could not fight back. The chief's words hang in the air like shattered glass, suspended, dangerous, reflecting every face in the courtroom. Even the hum of the overhead light seems to dim. The defendant's breath stutters, caught between disbelief and a deeper fear he cannot yet name. Judge Judy does not move. She doesn't blink. She lets the silence choke the space until the truth has nowhere left to hide. Finally, she speaks. Explain. The chief swallows hard, his voice, once a tool of command, now trembles with the weight of a father who has run out of lies to protect his child. There was an incident, he says softly. Years ago, before the Daniels complaint, before any of this, he was still in school. The defendant's head snaps up. Dad, don't. But the chief continues, staring straight ahead, unable to meet his son's eyes. A classmate, smaller than him, he lost his temper. There was a fight, except it wasn't a fight. It was one-sided. The boy didn't defend himself. He couldn't. A hush falls so deep the air seems to tighten. Judge Judy's expression hardens, not with judgment, but with clarity. Was it reported? The chief shakes his head, shame reddening his eyes. No, I intervened before it reached administration. I convinced the parents we would handle it privately. I made sure no record would follow him. The defendant's face collapses in horror. Why would you say that out loud? Why now? Because it's the truth, the chief whispers, and because hiding it didn't save you. It ruined you. The officer sits stunned, watching the family unravel before him. It is no longer just a case. It is a lifetime of consequences converging in one room. Judge Judy leans forward. Chief, look at your son. He hesitates, then lifts his eyes. The defendant is trembling. Not with anger, not with arrogance, with something much older, a fear born from realizing the person who protected him also trapped him. Judy's voice softens, but only slightly. You didn't guide him. You shielded him. You erased consequences so thoroughly he never learned he needed to change. The chief's face crumples. I know. The defendant's voice cracks. You told me I was misunderstood. You told me people were against me. I tried to keep you from being labeled, the chief cries, emotion finally breaking free. I thought, if I could protect you long enough, you'd grow out of it. But you never had to, because I never let you. The son stares at him, a wounded disbelief clouding his features. And then Judy asks the question that slices through the room like a blade. Is this the first time you've struck someone who couldn't fight back? The defendant closes his eyes. A tear escapes, not dramatic, but devastating in its honesty. No, he whispers. It isn't. He opens his eyes, empty, shaken, exposed. There's more, he says. Something I never told anyone. The defendant's final words linger in the courtroom like a tremor that refuses to settle. There's more. They float in the air, thin but heavy, the kind of admission that signals not just guilt, but collapse. Judge Judy does not rush him. She lets the silence expand, lets it wrap around him like a mirror he can no longer escape. The young man sits hunched, his once sharp posture wilted, his breath trembling as though each inhale scrapes at something inside him. The facade is gone. The arrogance has evaporated. Only the human wreckage remains. Take your time, Judy says softly, but with an undertone of steel. Truth should never be forced. It should be faced. The defendant rubs his palms against his knees, a restless, almost childlike gesture. He looks nothing like the smirking son who walked in earlier. His face is pale, eyes unfocused, jaw slack with exhaustion. It is as if the illusion he lived inside, the illusion built for him, has finally cracked open and the light is too bright to bear. I hurt people, he says quietly, voice trembling with memory more than fear. Not just the boy, not just the officers, anyone who challenged me, anyone who made me feel small. His father flinches as if struck. The young man's voice grows ragged. But I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at myself. I just didn't know how to stop. Because nothing ever happened. Nothing ever made me stop. The officer watches him with a complex mix of sorrow and revelation. This is not the monster he faced, nor the golden boy shielded by a badge. This is someone broken by protection, meant to help him. Judge Judy nods slowly. Accountability isn't cruelty, she says, her tone soft but weighted. It's correction, and without it, a person becomes a danger to others and to themselves. The defendant finally looks at his father. Their eyes meet, and something wordless passes between them. Years of avoidance, unspoken fear, misguided love, and consequences deferred until they became catastrophes. The chief's voice cracks. Son, I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I absorbed the consequences, you'd have space to grow. You didn't protect me, the defendant whispers. You just delayed the damage. The words fall like a quiet verdict. The chief bows his head, a man carrying the weight of a truth he tried to outrun. The judge sits back, letting the emotional dust settle. The courtroom is hushed, transformed into a space of reckoning rather than confrontation. Even the cameras seem to pull back, offering the moment the dignity of silence. Finally, Judy folds her hands. I have heard enough to understand the scope of this, she says, but before I deliver my findings, we must separate confession from consequence. Her tone sharpens. The room straightens. Truth is only the first step, she continues. Now we must determine what justice looks like in the shadow of all that has been revealed. She lifts her gavel slightly, not to strike, but to signal. Prepare yourselves. The consequences begin now. The weight of the last confession still clings to the air as Judge Judy straightens a stack of papers on her bench. She does it slowly, deliberately, a subtle ritual that signals the room is shifting from revelation to responsibility. The young man watches her hands move, his breath shallow, as though each soft rustle of paper tightens something around his chest. This, Judy begins, looking directly at him, is the point where truth must shape consequence. The defendant lowers his gaze. His fingers thread together nervously, knuckles pale, the tremor in them no longer masked by bravado or performance. He looks smaller now, not physically, but spiritually, like the shadow he once depended on has withdrawn, leaving him alone with all the choices he never had to face. Judy's gaze sweeps the room. This is not a criminal courtroom, she says. I cannot sentence you. I cannot imprison you. But justice is not confined to walls and bars. It exists in acknowledgement, in accountability, in the weight of what you have done. The chief shifts, his breath sharp. The officer watches stoically, bracing for what comes next. The defendant's shoulders sag further. Judy continues. You have harmed people physically and emotionally. You've abused perceived authority. You benefited from a system that bent itself around your actions rather than confronting them. She pauses. And perhaps worst of all, you were never asked to see the harm you caused. Her words land softly, but each one carries impact. The defendant speaks without lifting his head. I know that now. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. I swear. It is not about seeing, Judy says gently. It is about owning. She turns toward the officer. You have carried the humiliation and emotional weight of being struck in public by the son of your superior. That is not just a slap. That is a violation of dignity, of trust, of professional safety. The officer nods, just once, gratitude and pain balanced in his expression. Judy shifts her attention back to the son. Which brings us to the shape accountability must take. She folds her hands. You expect a fine, perhaps an apology, perhaps a warning not to repeat this behavior. He swallows. But you misunderstand the gravity of your actions. You misunderstand the damage, and you misunderstand the opportunity that stands before you. A flicker of confusion crosses his face. Judy leans forward, voice calm but unwavering. I intend to impose consequences far heavier than you anticipated, not out of cruelty, not out of vengeance, but because your pattern demands correction strong enough to break it. The gallery is still, breathless. The chief closes his eyes, bracing. The officer straightens, prepared. The defendant's pulse visibly throbs at his temple. Judy's final words are measured, firm, and echo with the promise of change. Justice must not only respond to harm, it must reshape the one who caused it. She reaches for a specific document, sets it before her, and looks directly at the defendant. This, she says quietly, is the consequence you never imagined. The document Judge Judy places before her is not thick. It contains no dramatic stack of evidence, no shocking exhibit, no hidden page waiting to be exposed. It is thin, deceptively thin, the kind of paper that reshapes people not by weight, but by meaning. The defendant stares at it as though it might ignite. Judy folds her hands. "You are not here to be destroyed," she begins, her tone gently controlled. "Destruction teaches nothing, but accountability can teach everything." The courtroom stills, listening not just with ears but with breath. "You have lived your life assuming that consequences were optional," she continues. "Today, they are not optional, they are necessary." The young man swallows, his throat constricting around emotion he does not know how to carry. What does that mean?" he asks, voice fragile. Judy turns to the officer. "You suffered emotional and professional harm at the hands of someone who believed you were beneath his respect. That deserves restitution." The son's head lowers, shame crossing his face like a shadow. "To that end," Judy says, "I am ordering financial compensation to the officer for emotional distress, violation of professional dignity, and the harm caused by both the incident and its public nature." The officer exhales, not triumphantly but with something closer to relief, like a weight finally moving off his chest. The defendant nods, accepting the decision with trembling hands. "I understand. I accept that." But Judy is not finished. "This," she says, lifting the thin document, "is a court-mandated referral to a clinical anger management and behavioral accountability program. You will undergo evaluation, therapy, and progress reviews, and your compliance will be monitored." His eyes widen. "Therapy?" "Yes," Judy replies calmly, "because punishment without healing only plants deeper roots in the same broken soil." The chief's breath trembles. His eyes fall to his lap, guilt and hope woven together. "And finally," Judy says, turning her gaze toward the gallery, "I will be forwarding the Daniels complaint, along with the evidence received anonymously, to external oversight authorities." A ripple of shock moves through the room. The chief lifts his head, stunned. "Your Honor." "Chief," Judy says, voice quiet but absolute, "this is not for you to stop anymore. Accountability does not skip generations." The young man closes his eyes. A tear slips free, small but sincere. "This is not cruelty," Judy repeats. "This is your chance, your first real chance to become someone your father never allowed you to be." He nods, breaking. I want that chance." And for the first time, the courtroom sees him not as a threat, not as a bully, not as a shadow of the badge behind him, but as someone capable of change if forced to face himself honestly. Judy lets the emotion settle before she speaks again. "Stand," she instructs him softly. He rises, trembling, vulnerable, exposed. Judy meets his eyes, steady, unblinking. "I have one last message for you," she says, "and it will decide what kind of man you become after today. Before you hear the final verdict, ask yourself, can anyone truly change? Or do people just get better at hiding who they are?" The young man stands trembling, as if the floor beneath him is shifting with every breath. Judge Judy studies him in a long, deliberate silence, the kind that carries more weight than any raised voice. The courtroom is utterly still. Even the cameras seem to quiet themselves, as though aware that filming a moment like this requires reverence, not intrusion. "Look at me," Judy says softly. He lifts his eyes, red-rimmed, unsure, bracing. "You have spent your life wearing armor someone else built for you," she begins. "A badge that wasn't yours. A reputation you didn't earn, protection you didn't deserve." His father shifts uncomfortably, guilt passing over his features like a shadow. Judy continues, voice neither harsh nor gentle, simply true. "You confused privilege with strength. You mistook fear for respect. And you believed consequences were something that happened to other people." He nods, slow and defeated. "I know that now." "Good," Judy replies, "because today," she leans forward slightly, "today is the first time you are actually standing as yourself. No badge behind you, no cover-up to cushion you. Just you and the truth you finally faced." He swallows hard, shoulders trembling with a mixture of fear and fragile resolve. "You hurt people," Judy says. "You humiliated an officer who was doing his job. You assaulted others who could not defend themselves, and you hid behind the authority of the man who should have taught you better." The chief bows his head, eyes glistening. But, Judy adds, allowing the word to breathe, you also did something today that may save you. You admitted your truth, fully, without disguise. A flicker of something, maybe hope, crosses his face. Judy's tone softens, but her words retain steel. Your restitution stands. Your mandatory anger management program stands. The referral to external authorities stands. These are not punishments. These are tools, and whether you weaponize them or learn from them is entirely your decision. The courtroom feels her words settling into place like stones forming a path. She continues, "This ruling is not meant to break you. It is meant to stop the cycle that has broken others, and it is meant to give you the chance your father should have given you years ago. The chance to grow." His breath catches, not in fear, but in something resembling relief. Judy meets his gaze squarely. If you choose honesty, if you choose accountability, if you choose to confront the anger you've spent years escaping, you may become a man worthy of the forgiveness you seek. A tear slips down his cheek. He doesn't wipe it away. The officer watches him, not with anger now, but with the quiet recognition that justice, finally, is settling in the right direction. Judy lifts her gavel. The final moment draws in like held breath. Arrogance collapses under truth, she says, voice firm and resonant. And today, truth has finally stood taller. She brings the gavel down, a single echoing strike that vibrates through every heart in the room. A verdict not just heard, but felt.